Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of Video Clips. I'm wearing the Video Clips uniform, Make Americans Free Again, the appropriate garb for what I'm going to share with you today. As you know, on Friday, if you've been watching me for a while, I focus on consequences of all of this. That's what I'm going to do today. I've got two stories to share with you. The first one, 2 weeks ago, I sent an email about what it is like to be a caring public school teacher. This week, I'd like to talk about my 99-year-old mother and assisted living and another reason why I would be making calls this evening. And by the way, I shared this person's story about the difficulties, kids that don't show up for class, 30% of this person's class he's never even seen. So anyway, here goes. My mother's medical issues were such that we had to put her where she could get the assistance we could not give. Although they did a soft shutdown at the outset of the supposed pandemic, we were able to see her on her birthday in June, bring steak and lobster along with all the great grandkids. Yes, we were outside, but she was so happy, ate well, had a wonderful time. Fast forward to this fall when the governor shut us down so tightly that we could not visit at all. I would call almost every day, but shortly after the hard lockdown, my mother started down the road of depression, apathy, and a refusal to eat. By the time Thanksgiving came around and she was told she would not be coming to a family home to celebrate, her decline snowballed. By Christmas, she would not get out of bed, claiming to be in too much pain, although there is nothing physically wrong with her. This past Monday, she was put on hospice. Funny how now we were allowed to go in and see her. Many things that day struck me as odd. They had housekeepers all around who don't live there but come in on a daily basis to clean. Why could family members not come in on a daily basis as well? Caregivers come and go every shift, but no, not family members. We were told that everyone's getting their vaccines, but will continue full PPE. Doesn't anyone see the insanity with that? There's a sense of pride around the fact. Visions of sheep keep leaping into my head. Perhaps the most shocking to me was the condition of my mother. She did not know who I was, even though we talk almost every day on the phone. She had been vibrant and looking forward to turning 100 this June, but probably will not make it. She is nothing but a tiny shell of what she was in June, so fragile. Her once lucid mind is all but gone, although I could hear this as the months progressed. I have no problem telling people she's not dying of or with COVID, but because of it. You're right, although she received the best care within the facility, so much that the director risked his job so the residents did not eat Thanksgiving dinner alone in styrofoam containers. The powers that be do not care. They do not care about our school-age children or our elderly. Fear is the awful monster that has gripped once sane people. These powers are so versed in the mongering. So horrific situation. I think the mark of a society is the way that it treats its most vulnerable people. And what has this society become? This society run by the people who think that this is okay. So I'll share another story with you. This is an obituary honoring an 86-year-old man in Bismarck, North Dakota. And it may reflect, the writer says, a rising tide of anger that sees Americans rebel against the arbitrary, capricious lockdown regulations that hypocritical politicians impose. The obituary, in addition to celebrating a true American, tells the brutal truth about how this man died all alone, kept from his family for almost a year because of lockdown policies that arguably have made no difference whatsoever. Mr. Lauer's bio says he was born in McCluskey, North Dakota, a small farming community an hour's drive from Bismarck. Except for his 2 years of honorable service in Korea as a medic, Mr. Lauer spent his entire life in that close-knit community of 380 people. He worked for 37 years at the co-op elevator of McCluskey, rising to become the manager. And after he retired, he spent 12 years at the North Dakota Department of Transportation in McCluskey, as well as being an assistant at Hertz Funeral Home, also in McCluskey. Life was not just work for Mr. Lauer. He was a member of and very active in the United Methodist Church. He sang in the choir, as well as in other men's choral groups. He served in the city council. He was mayor. He was member of the Lions Club, the school board, and the city fire department. He was also a member and a past commander of the McCluskey American Legion Post. In between his work and community service, Mr. Lauer found time to bowl, fish, golf, and follow local athletic teams. He and his wife raised 4 children, and they lived to see not just 12 grandchildren, but also a great-grandchild. In sum, Mr. Lauer was the quintessential American. He loved his country, his family, and his community. He served all of them with honor. And as I said, he was convivial. But here's the meat of his obituary, telling of a tragic, lonely, and frightening death, not in a dark alley or a battlefield, but in a Bismarck care facility, all courtesy of his own government. On November 16th, after 35 weeks of being imprisoned in a long-term care facility under the pretense of keeping him safe, Lloyd contracted the very thing they were supposed to be keeping him safe from, facility-acquired COVID-19. He battled through another 2 weeks of fear, isolation, and illness before his body finally surrendered and released his soul to go be with his Jesus. The process stole his freedom, his dignity, and his health, but it was unable to steal his beautiful spirit and his handsome smile, which he hung on to until the very end. As a society, what we have allowed to happen to Lloyd and all of those in long-term care is despicable. It robs the residents and their families of the most fundamental of needs, freedom, love, and affection, and makes the working conditions for their caregivers unbearable. If anyone thinks we're doing the right thing, they have not lived our nightmare of a journey for the last 9 months. And if you think this doesn't affect you, you're wrong. It just hasn't affected you yet. Think of Mr. Lauer as a soldier in a war, because we're not just fighting a virus, we're fighting American politicians who are drunk with power. Don't let his death be a tragic statistic. Give it meaning by demanding an end to this life-destroying, economy-killing lockdown regime, which has been proven, to judge by the very different outcomes in Florida and California, to harm, not save American lives. 2 tragic stories, all representing the same thing. Terrible treatment of vulnerable people for what? Do you think that either of these people, given the chance, if somebody came in and said, listen, you're in a nursing facility, and we're going to give you a choice, because after all, you're not 5, you're in your 80s or 90s or almost 100 years old, and you should be able to decide for yourself what you want to do with your life. We are supposed to be Americans, right? We get to decide. Do you think if the nursing home people had said, would you rather be safe from a virus and live by yourself, no contact with your family and friends and no visits, nobody in the same room, or take your chances and live your life normally as you have for the time that you've been here? Do you think that any of these people would have said, no, 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 keep me safe, lock me in, just bring me food, I don't care about anything else? None of these people would have made this choice. And you know what's really despicable? They weren't given the choice. The government made it for them. What kind of government do we have that takes free choice away from elderly people and their family and caregivers? This is despicable. It needs to end. You might notice I used to read these stories and cry on Friday. I'm not crying anymore because I'm so angry that the tears are over. Now it's just time to fix it. MakeAmericansFreeAgain.com. Email me at pampopper@msn.com. You're upset with this? Time to get busy, because if we don't fix it, it's going to go on and it's going to get worse. All right. So we're busy fixing it. If you want to know how you can join us, please let me know. That's all for today, all for the week, actually. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think might enjoy watching it, and I'll be back to you next week with more news.